Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Educational Gamer, and we have been playing a game of Command Modern Naval Operations, and this time I want to talk a little bit about what we learned from that game about the capabilities of the UK Navy. Next time we'll be talking a little bit about the Indian Navy, but this time it's all about the UK. So, Royal Navy. We have one group from the Royal Navy over here with the Queen Elizabeth carrier group. And that has been essential, I would say, actually, in conducting some of these strikes. Let's actually clean up the system over here. I do want to see the air sensors, so just so we know that we are covered by that. Right, so what do we know? What have we learned about the UK? So firstly, of course, this group is centered around the HMS Queen Elizabeth, the new sort of carrier of the Royal Navy. To be honest, with the carrier itself, I haven't had too much quarrel. It was basically sitting in the sea and launching units, so it was doing what it was supposed to do. So in that regard, it's not a bad carrier, it seems. It's pretty standard, I would say. However, there is one thing that I'm very concerned about. And that is what you can see over here, this Skyram configuration, which is a direct consequence of the aircraft that it does carry. Now, the aircraft that it does carry are the F-35s. You can see some of them standing around over here. It's more importantly the F-35B. So I said that initially, but really, to me, there's a there was a very big decision that was made in the UK procurement to not equip its carriers with a catapult, but to equip it with a sky ramp, and basically let aircraft launch on their own power instead of giving them a little bit more oomph by accelerating them with the catapult and giving them more speed. Now, the direct consequence of that is that the Queen Elizabeth does carry the F-35 Lightning B instead of the F-35C, and that sounds like a minuscule thing to say, but it does make quite a difference. And the difference is basically in the loadout that it can carry and in the distance that it can cover. So I'm not sure the game does reflect that all too fairly, but I think what we can have a look at is if we look at the F-35 from the US perspective, I think that's indicative at least. So let's look at, let's say, the 2016 variant of that, because I think that has the most direct or the best know-how that we have. So you can see the F-35B has basically all of these layouts, at least in a US configuration. And we might simply want to look at, let's say, this guy. I think this is a fair comparison. So over here you can see that it does carry basically a loadout of 2 anti-air missiles and 2 ground bombs. So bombs, basically. These bombs are not, they're precision guided bombs, of course. If you're flying this expensive aircraft all the way, you might as well carry guided bombs. But it's only 2 bombs. And 2 bombs is interesting. It's not enough, though, necessarily to do a lot of damage. You can destroy a bridge, maybe, but you might also want to consider that one of your bombs, even though precision guided, might miss. One of them might fail. So definitely you'll probably be putting 2 bombs on 1 target. So that really does allow you to engage 1 target and 1 target only on a strike. You can also see it does have a strike radius of 400 nautical miles, which is okay, I would say, but not necessarily the greatest. Let's pick a somewhat comparable 2019 F-35C, and let's pick a similar loadout. Yeah, I think this one. You can see that the F-35C would be carrying the same loadout, actually, very much the same bombs, but it would have a strike radius of 730 nautical miles, and that's a big difference. 400 versus 700 miles, nearly twice as much, and nearly twice as much doesn't just mean, let's consider that in the open water. So let's consider that. Maybe, you know what, let's think about what that would mean over here. So let's say your carrier is over here. So if you have a 400 mile strike radius, this is basically what you can cover. If you have a 700 mile strike radius, this is what you can cover. Now, that is important because if you were to, for example, if you want to strike, I mean, we can think about that in Pakistan, even though the area here is somewhat limited. So if you want to strike this area that we actually did strike over here, so 400 nautical miles, you would need to be somewhere within this radius. That is A, much easier to reach for the enemy with their weaponry, but it's also much easier to spot you. This area, it's not that big. It's a small sliver of the ocean. For example, on the other hand, if we had 700 mile radius, it would be significantly larger, and it wouldn't be just twice as large because the ocean expands out here, so it would be 3 to 4 times as large, and that is, I think, one of the most important points to make about the Queen Elizabeth. The Queen Elizabeth does carry F-35B. Due to its configuration, it did not get the catapult, it did get the sky ramp. That meant it did have to carry the F-35Bs, which are a vertical, like the Harrier, a vertical takeoff aircraft instead of the F-35C, which is capable of being launched by the catapult and which would have a much further strike radius. Or alternatively, which could carry much more weaponry on a given strike radius, or on a given strike mission. So that's the first point to make about the UK. So HMS Queen Elizabeth itself seems to be a fine ship. No real comments on that. But the strike group is fairly limited by the design of the ship itself. Let's think a bit about the rest of the strike group. So as we said, we are carrying the F-35B over here. The F-35B, in its current configuration, was a capable aircraft. It did allow us to do a couple of fancy things. So in particular, what we were able to do due to the stealth characteristics is we were able to sneak into enemy airspaces and kill some of their most important assets, some of their force multipliers. We were able to enter Pakistani airspace and shoot down, in particular, the ARAX platforms that they got from the Chinese, so the anti or the platforms that would have been capable of spotting us. So in that sense, it is very capable, and of course the precision guided bombs that it could deliver on targets were very useful as well. Nevertheless, we did lose one of the F-35s in this playthrough, and of course it was a very stupid play for me. It was simply stupid, and I was greedy and I was coming in too low on the enemy airspaces, but it does shows a little bit the limitations as well, because here are the two things that are really missing from the F-35 in the UK configuration. And it's a little bit difficult to spot, but if we look at their potential weaponry and all of the things that it can carry, you'll note that it is capable of an AA configuration, so anti-air configuration, basically carrying a lot of anti-air missiles. Different loadout of the same, a little bit different mix, more loiter time and such. That's fine. So it's a fighter. It can also carry bombs, either the GBU-32 or Paveway. That's fine. So these are basically bombs. You can go to a target, bomb it, fly away. Another Paveway mission that's basically the same, except that it's only internal. But note what is missing over here. So there are two things missing. One is it doesn't have any capability of engaging ships from distance. Yes, it could bomb ships, but a Paveway would have a range of about 15 miles. So you'd need to get 15 miles to within an enemy ship. That's simply not something that you want to do. So it's a little bit particular to see that the UK has fielded, in effect, a carrier force that is incapable of striking enemy ships. It just doesn't carry any weapon on the F-35 that would be capable of engaging any enemy shipping in this simulation. Yes, the bombs would be able to do that, but you need to get very, very close, and that's basically a no-go. So That's interesting. It's an interesting proposition to even build that. The other thing is that over here, at least in this simulation, there's no anti-radar weapon. So there's no weapon that you can use to suppress enemy air defenses. No seed weapon. That's important because normally the F-35 is a stealth aircraft, so it doesn't necessarily need that. It doesn't necessarily need to disable enemy radar installation, but stealth doesn't mean it's completely invisible to radar. It just means that it has a lower radar signature. So when you are getting close to the enemy, they still might spot you. And of course, we all know that that is what happened in effect to the F-117 over Serbia in 1999, I believe. So stealth aircraft are not invulnerable. And the F-35 is no exception to that. It's a very good aircraft. It's a very good stealth aircraft. It does have very low radar signature, which of course has been estimated for this publicly available simulation. But you can see... Where is it? I think it should be around over here. Radar signature? Yeah, signature. So there's a lot of suppression on the radar bands over here. So minus 18 to 28 decibels radar signature. That's a lot. So these guys are stealthy, but they are not. It's not impossible to spot them. So in that regard, I feel that's another big gap. You have no potential. You have no ability whatsoever to actually engage engage enemy radar installations. And that's a little bit of a bad thing, because basically the UK will be able to conduct single airstrikes against high value targets, delivering a couple of bombs. And let's talk about this in a second. Can I still get over here? Yeah, I can. So you can see in this configuration we had about 9 aircraft maybe ready. 8 aircraft I think ready. Some of them were needed to provide air defenses, so that left us with a strike force of about 4 aircraft capable of delivering up to 8 bombs on the enemy target. That's nice. You can certainly do some strikes. You will be exposing your carrier because you need to get fairly close, but maybe that's worth it. But it's a single strike against high value targets. It's not a war-winning capability. It's certainly not a war-winning capability in any sort of real war, but even in strikes against, let's say, a renegade state, let's say in a strike comparable to 2010-11 against Libya, you'd be able to send out individual bombing missions, but I don't think you'd be able to conduct a really thorough strike pattern. So in that sense, it's really... I'm really torn about the Queen Elizabeth carrier concept. It's an interesting concept. It's built to the scale of the UK capabilities in the 21st century. It's not a full-blown fleet carrier that the US could field, but ultimately it is fairly limited in its strike profile, and it does very probably need to be working in concert with allies. In particular, some of the F-35 strike missions are, I think, a very useful indication to act as a force multiplier for your allies, so you can come in, disable a couple of high-value targets, fly out, and let the other aircraft do the rest of the mopping up. And in that sense, it does work. Still needs to be too close to enemy air defenses for my liking, but it does, in effect, work as a force multiplier on that. It's not good enough on its own. Now, the other ship that I want to talk a little bit about is the Type 45 over here. So, in this case, HMS Duncan, which I think is the lead ship of the class. So the Type 45 Batch 2 is one of the latest ships of the UK. And I think this one actually, to be honest, did its job fairly well. So it's a destroyer. It's there to mainly provide enemy air defenses against the enemy. We were, if you remember well, in one episode attacked by anti-ship missiles that were launched from submarine from a very short distance, actually, just about 10 miles or so away from us. Submarine basically launched a couple of, maybe I think 4 or 5 missiles at us. Now, it did defend against that, and it did defend against that very well. I think it did use mainly the Aster missiles, the Aster 15, and mostly probably the Aster 30. Yeah, you can see the Aster 30 stocks are a little bit depleted over here, so this is what has been used. And honestly, I've absolutely no complaints about the Aster over here. The Aster is one of the latest anti-air missiles. You can see it's being boosted over here, so I think the Aster 15 is just the top half of this. Let's confirm that. It doesn't have a picture. So yeah, these are very similar things. This one has a little bit more range. I'm not sure why it was used in this defense pattern over here. Maybe simply a weakness of the simulation. Nevertheless, Queen Elizabeth did do its job. Queen Elizabeth and HMS Duncan did its job. Aster missiles did shoot down the enemy missiles that were approaching us, even though they were approaching us at very low speed, so maybe it's not that impressive. But overall, very happy about these things. Very good probability to hit, very good capabilities, very good active radar seeker over here, so these were able to engage these missiles pretty well, actually. So overall, a very good missile, very capable of being launched quickly, because I think, not sure whether we can see that over here, but these missiles are launched from sort of a box, so they are not launched from a launcher, but basically from a cell on the top of the... Can I not get Duncan? Oh no. Well, there's only one concern, well, two concerns, basically, with the Type 45. One is, I think in real life, the engine and propulsion did provide quite a bit of controversy, and it wasn't actually capable of being operated in the Persian Gulf that well, due to some temperature constraints. We didn't see that in this simulation, so it did behave well, which I think is good enough. But it's still a valid concern in real life, and I think they're even cutting these ships up and replacing the engine. But the thing I'm slightly concerned with is just the depth of these defenses. So you can see over here we have about nearly 15 missiles, which is nice, but it's really not that much. We probably need about 2 to 3 missiles for any missile that is attacking us, so that means that overall we are capable of defending against maybe 20 to 25 missiles until one gets through, and that doesn't feel extremely strong. Of course, we do have some other weapons. We do have these Phalanx 20mm guns or so. Yeah, 20mm guns. We have this 30mm guns, so there is some capability, but overall I'm slightly concerned about this this capability. Nevertheless, or the depth of these defenses. Nevertheless, in this scenario it did serve as well, so I'm entirely happy about that. We also had the HMS Ambush, the new submarine, and unfortunately we lost that, so I'm not actually sure whether we can we find that via this database. I don't think we can, or I don't know enough. Should be an S designation, shouldn't it? No, it's not. Oh well, then I didn't know which type it was. And nevertheless, it did serve as well. It did launch a couple of Tomahawks on these targets. Was capable of conducting a strike in that regard, and was actually at a very capable torpedo with a speed of 80 knots, which is extremely impressive and extremely valuable in submarine versus submarine defenses. So yeah, very happy about that. In the last minutes, let's talk a little bit about the losses over here. So overall we lost 4 MiG-29s. On the UK side, oh yeah, there we can see S1100S2, that's the submarine that we lost. So we should see that. Or maybe not. 119. I don't know why it doesn't do that. Astute. Weird. Okay. Never mind. So we did lose the UK submarine. We did lose the submarine of the Indian Navy. We did lose one F-35, and in real life that would have been a big concern because that we lost that basically over here from a very low altitude. So very likely that it would reveal a lot of secrets to the enemy. You can also see that we used up a lot of sonar buoys, more than 200 sonar buoys. Yeah, actually more than 250, so probably more like 300 sonar buoys, that we put into the water basically to listen to enemy submarines approaching, and we still didn't spot them all. There was still one that was getting within strike range of us. Also expended quite a lot of Tomahawks. That I think was very fine. A couple of anti-air missiles, all of that is fine. Let's see what we destroyed on the enemy side. Also you can see all of these bombs that we used. So we did manage to kill quite a lot of tanks, a couple of trucks, howitzers, M113s. Oh yeah, these are the ground forces. And we were actually able to disable their man-pads. Still, all in all, I think they had very, very slim air defenses. Just 3 units of man-pads. I think these RB-70s managed to shoot down quite a couple of our aircraft, so these were a problem. On the air side, they lost a couple of F-16s. They lost Maritime Strike. So all of these aircraft are spotting aircraft that they use to find us. Couple of helicopters. What I'm mostly interested in is, did we manage to take out? Yes. We did manage to take out the JF-17s and the Mirages. These guys were taken out by bombs on the airfield, so it's very good to see that being recognized, and very interesting actually. I'm not sure whether we do get to see the enemy disposition as we go along over here. Yeah, a couple of things that were launched at us. Nothing too important, I think. Scoring log. Did manage to destroy the bridge, hit the oil refinery, shoot down the admiral. So that's good. Nevertheless, we did lose one submarine and another one. Many enemy land targets destroyed. Our other submarine sunk. Still, all in all, so how many points did that cost us? 100. Which is just as much as killing an enemy air unit, which I don't think is a fair assessment. Nevertheless, a good triumph over here. Do we get to see any... We don't get to see the enemy disposition, so that would have been interesting to see where they stand. Yeah, nevertheless, interesting. Good. So with that being said, I think we call this episode to a close. Next time will be the last video of the series. I will be talking a little bit about the Indian capabilities, which of course differed tremendously from what the K brought to the table over here, in many bad but also some good ways. So stay tuned for that, and I see you guys next time. Bye bye.